Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, the trade deadline has come and gone, and Pierre Dorion snuck another move in right before the buzzer.
Yeah, it wasn't a major move, but bringing in Patrick Brown for a 6th-round pick from the Philadelphia Flyers, so we'll break that one down.
Whole trade deadline recap, including a couple moves that were made that I thought, why didn't the Sens match it? It's all coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
And welcome to episode 748 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan here with Brandon Piller in Los Cabos, Mexico on this Days of the Week Don't Exist down here.
March 3rd.
It's Friday, March 3rd. Pillsy, Pierre Dorion made 4 trades ahead of the deadline. I will say some bigger than Patrick Brown, but that's the most recent one. Your reaction to that one going down?
We talked about it yesterday, Ross, that if Dorion's going to do anything, it's probably going to be a rental, lower-level centerman, and not to take anything away from Patrick Brown. That's just where he fits in the lineup. But I think this is a nice move, a 6th-round pick. Screw the picks. So if you're going to say screw the picks for 1st-round picks and 2nd-round picks, a 6th-round pick especially, you're not too worried about. So you bring in a guy that plays center. He's got a really good face-off percentage, I believe around 55% this season. He's a physical player. He was 4th on the Philadelphia Flyers in hits, and that's a Flyers team that has players like Zach McEwen, Nick Delorier, and I think Wade Allison was the other guy ahead of him. So some tough guys there. So I think this is a guy that he's going to be very similar to Mark Kastelic, right? Good face-off guy, strong, physical, but a little more NHL experience under his belt. So I think it gives you some nice options. And anytime you're heading into a wildcard race, you got to have depth because, Ross, as we've seen, injuries do happen, and you want to make sure you're set up to succeed if they do.
Parts of 7 NHL seasons for the 30-year-old Patrick Brown, who has 2 goals and 5 assists, 7 points with Philadelphia in 43 games this season, but only became somewhat of a regular last year, had 44 games played, 9 points since moving to Philadelphia, was in the Vegas organization beforehand, Carolina before that, where he was a captain with the minor league team there, the Charlotte Checkers, also a captain with the Henderson Golden Knights, Silver Knights rather. So it does have leadership intangibles as well. And in 120 NHL games, a 56.9% face-off success rate. So certainly he brings some of that. And Pillsy, what does Pierre Dorion love?
He loves winners, Ross.
He is a champion of the Calder Cup and an NCAA champion, 4-time Hockey East champion, but he's a national champion as well with Boston College.
You know what I heard there, Ross? Champion, 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 champion. So anytime you can acquire a champion at the trade deadline, you got to pull the trigger on that.
No Stanley Cup for him just yet, but his dad has a pair.
Hey, and he's put himself in a chance to obtain a Stanley Cup here. Let's be real.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, we will tell you as well. Yeah, back-to-back championships for Doug Brown, his dad. We know the Sens have quite the thing with having sons on the team of players who have had NHL careers. Doug Brown played almost 900 games, much of which came with the Detroit Red Wings and New Jersey Devils. But Patrick Brown's just the last of a quadrant of moves, none bigger than Jakob Chychrun, who made his NHL debut last night. If you didn't catch the postcast, you can go listen to in-depth coverage from last night's game.
It was a good time.
Wherever you get your podcast. And if the internet does go out for just a split second, it will come back. It sounds all good for us, so apologies if there are any of that. We're working through Los Cabos internet, but you know we're here, your first listen each and every day. Trade deadline season, one of my favorite times of the year.
Yep.
And the Senators were buyers for the first time since they acquired Victor Stahlberg and Tommy Wingels in the 2017 lead-up, and Alex Burrows. How can I forget? Hugs and high fives.
Yeah, the hugs and high fives. Yeah, this is a refreshing trade deadline for us to cover, Ross, because before it, all the buildup was, all right, how are we going to say goodbye to these legendary Senators that we like, Mark Stone Erik Karlsson, JG Pageau, all these guys that have really been fan favorites. And what magic beans are we going to get in return that we can now turn from hoping to win to just being hopeful that you get something out of them? So now is a little different as the Ottawa Senators, they acquire Jakob Chychrun, a massive move. And if you're watching on YouTube, Ross has pulled up the deadline in and out here. They also get Julien Gauthier, Patrick Brown, and a 7th conditional round draft pick this draft.
Well, if the New York Rangers win a round in the playoffs, which I hope so, because we had that back and forth with Devils Twitter after that ridiculous, remember in the All-Star game where that's a dangerous play on Jack Hughes in the All-Star game. So that pushed me right over to the Rangers side of this all but inevitable first-round matchup between the Devils and Rangers. Long story short, that 7th round pick for Tyler Mott becomes a 6th round pick if they win a round in the playoffs, and then they still have a 6th rounder that way, with the Patrick Brown one being their own 6th rounder going out the door. Pierre Dorion says, screw them picks, and why wouldn't he? So you mentioned what's come in. On the way out is Tyler Mott and Nikita Zaitsev. Those are the 2 only active players in the entire organization that were moved. No young prospects, only picks. 2023 first rounder. It is top 5 protected. So if you have a Connor Bedard jersey ready, you might have other reasons why it doesn't work out, but it wouldn't be because they win the lottery after trading away their pick. The 2nd round pick from this year's draft, gone. Next year's 2nd rounder acquired from Connor Brown trade, Washington, gone. But if the Sens make it to the conference finals this year, that becomes a 1st round pick. I think that a lot of Sens fans would be A-okay with that price of making it to the 3rd round this season. They also gave up the 6th rounder from this year. We already talked about that with Patrick Brown. And then this is hilarious because I think Dorion's onto something. If you trade picks that are more than 3 years away, they don't even show up in cap friendly. So it doesn't show that you're missing picks yet.
The fans will never know that those picks are gone. And Ross, RIP to our draft coverage in 2026.
Oh, no 2nd, no 4th in 2026 for Pierre Dorion. So what do you think of these moves? What do you think of the totality of it? Of course, you're gaining the best player on this chart is on the right side of it in Jakob Chychrun coming into the mix with the Ottawa Senators. But overall, are you happy with what Pierre Dorion did? Do you still get upset that some of those picks were him making up for his own mistakes in bringing in Nikita Zaitsev and still kind of buying your way out of that? Or have you moved on and said, wow, he addressed the decor just like he told Claude Giroux he would back in the summer before he ended up signing with the Ottawa Senators? Where are you at with Pierre Dorion right now? Pierre was very open about his admiration again for DJ Smith, saying he is the right coach for the job. We will see soon, as these next 4 games are extremely winnable. We've gotten past the point of like, okay, this one's make or break. This one's make or break. They are in the mix. It's a 4-way tie right now. So now you're in the meaningful game sector of the playoff hunt. Playoff hunt. P word is now in the mix.
You're tossing out the P word after giving me crap for just saying P word. You're just fully saying it.
Playoffs.
All right.
We will tell you the cheering chart of who you should want to win tonight's NHL action. A Friday night, can't be too many games. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But you look at a team here that's tied with Buffalo, tied with Florida, tied with the Washington Capitals. But those latter 2 teams have 2 more games played in hand. Nobody really made any big moves. We'll also get into league-wide trade reaction from the NHL. But man, this playoff hunt is going to come down to March. And we know that murderer's row of schedule in mid-March, but right now you have Columbus, you have Chicago, you have Vancouver, and you have Seattle. Those games have to be wins for the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to your original question, what I think of the trade deadline ins and outs, and look, everybody makes mistakes, Ross. I mean, we've been known to make a mistake or two on this show. So the thing is, how do you mop up your mistakes? And Pierre Dorion had to mop up that Nikita Zaitsev mistake because that was a bad one. And he does that. And the key to Jakob Chychrun, Ross, is he's a great player with term. And he essentially swaps out that Nikita Zaitsev contract for this year and 2 more years of Jakob Chychrun. So overall, I'm happy with this. He gets some depth in bringing in Julien Gauthier and Patrick Brown. So I would say overall, successful trade deadline.
Give me a teacher's grade on this deadline for Pierre Dorion.
I'll go B+. No, you know what? I'll bump it up to A- because Jakob Chychrun having term and on a good contract is so important, and that's the piece that the Ottawa Senators needed here. So I'll go A-, Ross.
I'll say B+, just because I'll play devil's advocate that it wouldn't have cost, 5 total picks if you're including the 2 that they moved with Zaitsev to go out and get him. Maybe you would have had to, make it whatever it is, but 5 total picks going out the door with Nikita Zaitsev to get Jakob Chychrun is quite a lot. But overall, you have to love what he did. And Patrick Brown, I actually think, could play a decent role here. We've heard a lot about Dylan Gambrell, who's playing some of his best hockey, may I add. 3-game point streak for Dylan Gambrell right now. But I do think that you need some more depth, and we've been very, very loud about picking up Igor Sokolov, getting him into the mix, but completely different position. You're not going to bring up Igor Sokolov to play 4th-line center. So this way, you've got kind of that depth piece who can come in and out of the lineup. I don't expect Patrick Brown to play every game from here on out, but he's certainly a good in and out of the lineup type guy. Think Parker Kelly, that energy, but at center ice and winning faceoffs.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You get a physical guy that can win faceoffs like that. Like, that's your prototypical 4th-line center. And I think Mark Kaslick was already doing a good job of that. But again, you got to have depth if you're going to push for the playoffs. We're saying it here. That feels weird to just fully let those out. But I think overall, at the cost of a 6th-round pick, good move.
Good move. What do you think about the move? Let us know. Coming up next, we're going to touch on Jakob Chychrun's NHL debut with Ottawa at Madison Square Garden, a 5-3 win for the Ottawa Senators, and what was sustainable from that victory that you'd like to see them carry into their Saturday home game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. All that and trade deadline reaction. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. Ross, it's the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. The reasons I love Built Bar is they find out ways to make the bars taste good. Then they find out how to make them healthy. Ross, if only they had a pina colada Built Bar, that would be absolutely great. But they do have a lot of fruit flavors. If you like raspberry, they have coconut, so you get part of that there. All the berries, black cherry, every single flavor of Built Bar that I've tried, I've liked. And that's just the taste of it, Ross. They're also high in protein, high in fiber, but low in sugar and low in calories. So everything you want and nothing that you don't. But don't just take my word for it. Head to the website today, built.com, and we're going to sweeten the deal by giving you a promo code. Of course, you know we got you guys. So at built.com, use promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off your next order. One more time, go to built.com, promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off your next order. It's Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the GLEBE Central Pub. You got to go check them out, the GLEBE Central Pub. They are locked and loaded. New bar top, new vibe, but still the same great service and atmosphere at the GLEBE Central Pub. Find them at 779 Bank Street, right in the heart of the Glebe. It's a perfect place to go before you head down to Lansdowne. If you're in the summer, you're going to the Red Blacks, 67s, you name it. It's the best spot for a little pre. Whether you're hanging out there for trivia night, whether it's live music, whether it's comedy, whatever you're into, check them out on social media at GLEBE Central Pub, and you'll know when all these events are taking place. Always check them out at 779 Bank Street, and when you go, make sure you let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. We love our friends at the GLEBE Central Pub. Go check them out, the GLEBE Central Pub in the heart of the Glebe. Find them at 779 Bank Street and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. All right, Pilsy. About a month of trade season in the books. The Ottawa Senators clearly adding, which is great to see, but now they've got to add some wins to their 4 straight they have right now. In case someone did miss the postcast, what's your initial thoughts on Jakob Chychrun's performance?
Well, I mean, it was a little bit underwhelming for a guy that you were so excited about, but you got to put a grain of salt on that. This is a guy that hadn't played hockey, Ross, since February 10th. He came in on a red-eye flight, no time to practice.
Two naps.
Yeah, a couple naps. Are we going to do the JG Pajot treatment for that? 2 naps, 2 chicken parm, 2 naps. But he's kind of put him in a tough spot. Not only all those factors, Ross, but you're up against the New York Rangers, a really talented hockey team, even though the Ottawa Senators beat them 5-3. But I think overall, we're going to get to see him in a lot of different spots. DJ Smith put him with Nick Holden on the bottom pair just to kind of ease him into the lineup here. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up playing a majority of his time. I still think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Brandstrom here. We were both shocked that Holden took Brandstrom's spot and Brandy was the odd guy out. So that'll be interesting to monitor as we move forward here.
Well, Pierre Dorion mentioned in his press conference we just finished listening to before hitting record, and that was about wanting him to feel comfortable in the first game and putting Chychrun with a guy who talks a lot on the ice, good communicator, good veteran in Nick Holden, and a guy who has experience playing the right side in Nick Holden.
Yeah,
so
fair.
That way you keep Chychrun on the left side for now, but certainly he's going to end up playing more minutes than a third pair guy should, typically. But now the question is, what happens with Sanderson? How are you going to get all your left defensemen their minutes unless you do end up sliding a guy over? And what is the future of Erik Brandstrom? These are all very fair questions and ones that I'm excited to see how it turns out, how Tyler Kleven steps into pro hockey. Will he need a year or 2 years even with Belleville? I think we need to kind of pump the brakes a little bit on the type of immediate impact that he could make at the NHL level. And you're talking to like his biggest supporters for the last 2.5 years since the draft. So we're fired up for Tyler Kleven, but I think putting him as like a number 5 defenseman right now is a little bit too quick, too much, too soon. I think they will need Nick Holden down the stretch. So I laughed. We did in the postcast how we did 4 different combinations. All of them had Nick Holden as a healthy scratch, but I do see what this team understands he brings to the lineup, and he was perfectly fine yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's not that crazy of a move to do, and I think it's interesting to note, Ross, we were kind of chit-chatting, okay, Chychrun's coming in. Where's he going to play on the power play? A guy with his goal-scoring ability, you're going to slot him in. But then does that mean you take Sanderson out of the second power play unit? But what they did is they had Sanderson still playing the point, and Chychrun was a little bit closer to the net, kind of being a net front presence that could
he was like in and out, almost like where Josh Norris is on his one-timer side, but he was sneaking down even a little bit deeper.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it'll be interesting to follow along if that's what they continue, because you were mentioning if this happens and Chychrun ends up being on the second pair, which I think inevitably will happen, does Sanderson lose his ice time? Well, it's good to know he's, at least for now, it doesn't seem like he's going to lose that spot on the second power play unit. So that's good for Jake Sanderson, because if anyone's earned the right to have opportunities on the power play, a rookie defenseman in Jake Sanderson, I think certainly has earned that right.
Travis Hamonic was second behind Jake Sanderson in ice time last night among Senators defensemen. 21-42 for Jake Sanderson, over 6 minutes of it shorthanded, and Travis Hamonic played over 7.5 of his 21-15 shorthanded. And you listen in the locker room, obviously Derek Brassard, no spoilers, but he got the goggles in his 1,000th game, 2 goals, just a tremendous performance and a great guy. Like, you know, you can see in that video, and he was mic'd up, just how much the team absolutely loves him. Timmy was giving him a kiss on the neck. He was so happy. Give him a hug before the game. So,
and I like how Timmy kept the joke going. You're a good-looking kid to Derek Brassard playing in his 1,000th game. So you love to see that. And then keeping Austin Watson, that was another move a lot of people thought maybe might happen. But again, the Sens aren't sellers in this deadline. Even they moved Tyler Mott, but I wouldn't necessarily call that a selling move because they get a player back in return, a younger player under team control. So overall, that's looking like a better move right now. We hope Tyler Mott comes back sooner rather than later after Austin Watson, ironically, is a player that injured him in last night's game.
Well, and usually you would think that we'd hear if there was going to be a hearing for that hit. I know
we haven't seen anything.
Some people online thought that there was going to be maybe a 2, even 3 game.
I thought so, Ross.
I said in the postcast, I said because it was in the first period, I think that they see that as a full game punishment pretty much. Okay. Like, what did he end up playing in last night's game? I still have it up right here. 2 minutes and 31 seconds. So I'll go with that being the reason why, because it certainly deserved a major penalty. I don't think it's easy to argue that one. Last note on the game as well, and I'll pick up on your point too, but Claude Giroux is 14 points away from 1,000 points. So this season, now it just seems like when, not if, and they're 15 games away from playing the Philadelphia Flyers, who will also have Brendan Lemieux, as he was one of their trades today. So that could be a really fun game to circle on the calendar coming up in just the start of April in the stretch run for the Ottawa Senators here. But I think that Pierre Dorion made a great point today. Look, Matt Sogard has played great, Rookie of the Month, 4-0-1, 922 save percentage. But if you're really going to compete and you want these big elevated games, I almost think that Sogard, even just being here in the mix and seeing the preparation of a vet like Cam Talbot is huge for him. And he'll go in and he'll play some games. And I hope he plays a considerable amount. I hope he gets one of the next two between Columbus and Chicago.
I'm sure he will.
You don't want, even though it's not a back-to-back, you don't want to have it so that he's sitting for too long, especially when the momentum is in his favor, doing really well. So I'm curious to see how Zach Burke is going to roll out the goaltenders for the next stretch of games, but keeping Cam Talbot became a no-brainer once he got back. And even against Carolina, there were a couple that you didn't love, but you're just like, hey, it's his first game back in a while, and the team in the first period was just dominated. Yeah. Worked. So that third period, the bang one timer, like he's not going to do anything to stop that. And that was the real nail in the coffin of that 4-0 loss. But then he comes back out, man, and he's been lights out. So happy for that. And Austin Watson, you could have traded him, but I don't mind that they didn't. And Pierre Dorion on record is saying this, and this is the human side of the game that some fans could not care less about. They would just say, shut up and play. You're made so much money. There's 32 teams. A lot of them are in beautiful cities. Yep. You'll be fine.
And it's a business at the end of the day.
Pierre Dorion says that he did not even consider trading Nick Holden or Travis Hamonic because of their family circumstances. So you know what? I respect that. I also, you know me, I'm a Hamonic stan here. I do think he brings value to the Senators, and especially of recent, he has played really good hockey for his kind of comfort zone, and even his shots are getting on net. And you see the rebound, Giroux scoring the goal last night right off of a Hamonic shot. So I understand the human element, and I'm happy for the dressing room as well, because those are guys who have been told that they're big, important pieces, right? They kind of have a presence. They're veterans. You move them out, then all of a sudden the guys don't feel like they're getting a boost. They feel like they're getting torn down, despite maybe the on-ice impacts being negligible.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair point. And Pierre Dorion mentioned a couple weeks ago, even, Ross, that there was no consideration to move Travis Hamonic. I think Pierre Dorion and probably DJ Smith passing this message along really value that Jake Sanderson has played consistently with him. So again, why would you put Jake Sanderson out of a spot that he's made clear he's comfortable in with Travis Hamonic? I don't care whether you're a fan that's like, oh, he shouldn't be playing with Hamonic. He elevates Hamonic's game, not the other way around. Regardless of what you think, if Jake Sanderson is saying that, Ross, it's like the Toronto Blue Jays tweet, who's the source of if Jake Sanderson likes playing with Travis Hamonic? Literally him.
Literally him, Jake Sanderson. And I bet the 20-year-old loves having now another voice of experience, even though he's only 24, Chychrun nearing 400 NHL games. So that decor all of a sudden shaping up as this team is going to look for a 5th straight win on Saturday against the Columbus Blue Jackets. We're going to tee up that game for you and more coming up next. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed.com, Ross. I love Indeed.com. This isn't even part of the script. I've used Indeed.com multiple times. The job I am currently at, bartending at Black Bellows Brewery, found it on Indeed.com. So that's a review from me right there that it works. But Ross, it's not just for finding jobs. If you're an employer looking to find employees, Indeed is great for you, because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in the same place. They make it nice and simple for you. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hoping for candidates with right skills, you need one powerful hiring partner that can do it all for you, and that is Indeed. With Indeed Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, You get a short list of quality candidates with resumes that match your job description. So you're not sifting through a bunch of people that aren't even really qualified for what you're looking for. You got to work smarter, not harder, and Indeed helps you do that. Start hiring right now, and you can get $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. That offer is valid through March 31st. One more time, guys, go to Indeed.com/lockedon. And you can get your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed, the best place to hire.
All right. I'm Ross Levitan alongside Brandon Piller. This is the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day. Thank you for vibing with us throughout our time in Mexico. We appreciate you making us your first listen each and every day, and the numbers are extraordinary. We can tell Sens fans are excited that Jakob Chychrun's here, the team's winning, we're buying, and the fans are coming out in droves, and we expect them to continue Saturday against Columbus. It's going to be a special moment as Derek Brassard will be presented with his silver stick for making it to 1,000 games. His family, friends will all be there. How do the Senators not get caught up in that moment and make sure they come out and don't let this game slip in to a look-over game as they're heading out on the road after for their longest road trip of the year?
This is a big-time trap game, Ross, because, you've got a heartfelt ceremony for Derek Brassard, who was drafted by the Columbus Blue Jackets, correct?
6th overall.
Yeah, so that's a big team to be playing him, nice coincidentally there. And the thing is, you just played some tough opponents when you're looking at the...
Detroit's not tough.
Well, I mean, okay, let me...
Literally not tough.
Yeah, fair. Let me rewind that. You've played some big, meaningful, important games. You can't look at Columbus, be like, oh, they're not in the race. They've sold off a lot of pieces. We'll just get through here, because you need to make sure that you're getting those points. Even though they're in the race, Ross, they're still not in a wild card spot. You can't get too comfortable here. So I think the Ottawa Senators are going to have to really make sure, let's get our business done, and then they kick off a big road trip heading through the western part of the continent here.
And dude, Columbus is going to be second half of back-to-back. They're hosting Seattle tonight.
Nice.
So you have to get that tomorrow. You have to come out and punctuate the game right off the bat. Put hard forecheck right early and make sure you are ready to rock and roll. I'm excited for tomorrow night's game. You go back to Cam Talbot in this one? I think I do. I think I do him in this game, and then go with
Sogard in
Chicago on Monday. Give Sogard a chance at redemption after he played well, but the team blew it against Chicago when we were there for the Chris Neil game.
Yes, actually, I love that play. And give Cam Talbot the start at home, and then Sogard can kick this road trip off. Yes, I think that's the right play, Ross.
It's going to be a crazy, tough road trip. Not maybe because of the opponents. Calgary's struggling a little bit right now as well. Yeah. Edmonton's going to be a tough game, but that's a long road trip coming Seattle up for the Sens. Seattle, Vancouver. We're going to get into that Monday. Hopefully have Mark Mathot join us sometime next week. Meth will be on for sure. We'll have Monday's show for you probably early right here in Cabo, and then Tuesday back at our homestead in Collingwood and Winnipeg. But Pilsy, out of all the trades that went down, were there any where you're like, I kind of wish Ottawa was in on that guy?
I mean, it's tough to say, because really the only thing that the Ottawa Senators were looking for, and I think would make sense to acquire, was a center depth move defenseman. Ross, I'm sorry, but you threw it to me, so I'm going to take your guy. The Nick Bukestad deal, I feel like the Ottawa Senators could have mixed in there.
3rd round pick, right?
Yeah.
Screw picks.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's if you're looking for a rental piece and you're going from a 3rd to a 6th, I like the move that they did with Patrick Brown, and I'll toss it back over to you with another player that was kind of mentioned that the Ottawa Senators might look at, and he was dealt today as well from the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, Nick Bonino, a guy who obviously beat Ottawa in 2017. He was a big part of that team for Pittsburgh, right? As kind of a 3rd-line guy, and he's a guy that wins you faceoffs as well. So a little bit about what Patrick Brown brought, but Bonino probably a little bit slower. Yeah, it was a 5th and a 7th round pick for that. So
averages out to a 6th.
Yeah, exactly.
Not math, guys.
I didn't have a 6, so I offered a 5. No, but a 5th and a 7th for Nick Bonino. I found that interesting as well. So that one would have been where I'd gone. But look, Pierre Dorion completes his mission to go out and get a depth veteran piece, a guy who's a leader. And maybe he asked Julien Gauthier what he thought about his leadership style, because he was Julien Gauthier's captain with the Charlotte Checkers just a few years ago. Patrick Brown, 30 years old, brings some experience, but we'll see what else he can bring to the table for the Senators organization.
And we could see as early as tomorrow, Ross, what the newest addition, the newest Ottawa Senator, Patrick Brown, is. Just another Brown being acquired and playing on this Ottawa Senators team,
right?
Is just crazy. And then we threw in Dean Brown as a part of the squad as well. So 5 Browns through this team.
The rebuild.
Yes, through the rebuild.
We've gone through the shit.
Yeah, I guess.
But Patrick Brown is still here.
Yes.
Awesome. Really appreciate everyone making us your first listen. Let us know in the comments as well. Who would you have liked Pierre Dorion to go out and get, or are you satisfied of what he was able to get done, bringing in Julien Gauthier, then Patrick Brown, and, of course, the big fish in all that, Jakob Chychrun. Let us know as well what you thought about Jakob Chychrun's performance. His numbers, decent. You could tell he was a little maybe discombobulated. First time playing on a team not named the Arizona or Phoenix Coyotes. So we'll see what's next for Jakob Chychrun and this Senator squad. Appreciate everyone for engaging with the show. As always, you can do that on social media as well, at Sens Central on Twitter and LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. For today, we say goodbye. Have a great weekend. We'll talk after tomorrow night's game, Columbus and Ottawa. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.